Hello, BookTube. Some of you may have seen the announcement videos for yet another reading event coming up here on BookTube in August. Book Trek 2021, a 5-month journey in which we read every month from August till the end of the year books of Star Trek. Books that are based on each iteration of Star Trek. So in August it will be the original series. And then September it'll be The Next Generation, and October it will be Deep Space Nine, and November it will be Voyager, and then December it will be Star Trek Enterprise. And Star Trek was not, originally, any series was not based on any books. These are books that were generated because it was so popular. So we have various different authors writing adventures of these characters set in those worlds, and there have been hundreds and hundreds, maybe more than 1,000 Star Trek books over the decades. And the Book Trek 2021 is designed to get you to read some of those, as Vin and Revenant Reads is the one who's masterminding this event, and as he said many times, he's trying to head you off at the pass from sending him irate letters from the public. He's mentioned many times, these are not typically great science fiction. They're typically not great literature, but they can be a lot of fun. They are as he puts it, comfort food. And so we are embarking on this journey aboard the USS Harold Bloom with Vin at Revenant Reads as our captain. We have a lot of other great people too, though. We have the ship's librarian, Mark Richardson at Richardson Reads. We have the ship's dog walker, I guess would be me. We have yeoman Gina Stanyer, who's never read any Star Trek fiction, so she's the red-shirted newcomer. We'll have to hope that she doesn't get eaten by a Horta. And just in case you wanted more confirmation that our voyage is actually doomed, we have Michael K. Vaughan as ship's counselor. Okay, so we're all this is the book voyage of the damned. And we're all going to pick books for the month of August to start off. And I noticed that a couple of people are talking already about TBRs for August, to be reads, the list of the projects for what they're going to do for Book Trek 2021 in August. TBRs don't tend to work for me. I don't do anything but read and take care of my little bean. Oh, the little bean. Oh. We were on our early morning walk and we came across a group of people. We're on a wooded path. We came across a group of 3 people and they were really nice. Frida paused when she saw them around the corner. Then she stiffened and I knew what was going to happen. It was Old Faithful was going to blow. And of course, when they got within 10 feet of her, she did her classic Frida yodel, where she stiffens her whole body, and then the force of it brings up her front legs off the ground, where she'll go, where she'll just sound familiar, maybe? She's not where she'll just, it's one high-pitched note, and it means, here I am, pay attention to me. Sometimes it's preceded by a throaty growl, and yet in 4 years, no one has ever been threatened by it. People hear that sound and just their faces crack open in huge smiles. And she did that first thing this morning and just ran from person to person. She jumps up to hold on to your knee. She reaches about your knee, and she looks up at you, smiling at you and telling you to pet her, and you have to fuss over her. And then when you fuss a little, she'll leave you and go to the next person and do the same thing until they fuss on her. Then she'll go to the third person and do that. Then she'll go back to the original person. And we did that first thing this morning, and then after a while, after maybe 5 minutes, a couple of the people of that trio sort of wanted to move on, but I had to tell them, no, Frida determines when you'll go. When she has had enough from you, it's really kind of embarrassing for me as her human. When she's had enough from you, she will break off and simply walk away as if you don't exist. She will dismiss you completely once you've given her what she wants. And they all laughed at that they had to just wait until she was finished. And sure enough, when she was finished, they stopped existing to her. But anyway, how did I get on that digression? Oh, right, because we're on the USS Harold Bloom, and we are embarking on Star Trek for August, and that TBRs don't really work for me because aside from walking Frida, I don't do anything but read. and my co-host can't say the same thing. They all have jobs and loved ones and personal hygiene and whatnot. So I can't really do a TBR because I'm going to be reading a lot of books, a lot of Star Trek in August. But I thought I would go over a few of the strictures that I'm imposing on myself for August, and I think for all other months of Book Trek 2021. And that is, number one is that I have favorite authors for Star Trek books. I have read almost every Star Trek book that's ever been written, and I've read quite a few of them many times. And some of them, you do that, you develop favorite authors. And I've made mention of some of them on this channel. Margaret Wander Bonanno, for instance. Gar and Judith Rees-Stevens. Of course, Diane Carey, who I consider to be the best Star Trek writer. A writer who never phones it in and who never insults the intelligence of her readers, and who also understands nautical matters, which almost no other Star Trek writers do. Has spent time on the open ocean. So when I was thinking of Book Trek 2021 and Star Trek books, I was thinking, oh, isn't it going to be great to revisit these people? And I thought, no. One of the strictures I'll impose on myself for Book Trek is that I won't do that. I won't go back to the authors that I most love. In the old fan fiction days, that would be, for instance, Sonia Marshak and Myrna Culbreth, who did a couple of short stories and a few novels that I love as guilty pleasures. They are fairly breathless. And they partake quite a bit of the what BookTube would call the tropes of Star Trek fan fiction, of Star Trek fiction before Paramount Studios got involved with the fiction as an ongoing property, as an intellectual property. Star Trek fiction before that, in dot matrix fanzines and even in some of the earlier novels, has some hallmarks. Let's just put it that way. It has some hallmarks. And I know some of those authors quite well, and I thought, no, this is a chance to read elsewhere. So for Book Trek in August, I am not going to read any authors that I really love already, and I'm not going to read any books that I know backwards and forwards. Instead, I'm intentionally going away from that. I'm going to pick books that I've read only once. I will try to draw the line at twice. I don't need to be rereading any Star Trek novels that I've read more than twice, unless they are sentimental favorites of mine. There's no limit to the number of times that I can read The Price of the Phoenix by Sondra Marshak and Myrna Culbreth. But that's purely personal. That's purely sentimental on my part. So that's what I'm going to do for August. I'm going to do one stricture I'm going to lay on myself is I'm not going to any of my old favorites. I'm not going to reread any of those. And although I will revisit those books if you want me to do, like for instance, starter kits of stuff that I consider to be really good for each iteration of Star Trek. Certainly I could do that for the original series. There I would revisit books. Some of the best Star Trek books would have to be on those lists, and some of those would be by Diane Carey. But not only that, I thought this would be a good occasion for me to revisit Star Trek books that I did not like and try them again. Stuff that I read them the first time and thought, those of you who are younger, might not fully appreciate what old school Star Trek fans felt like when they started getting Star Trek novels. When they started getting Star Trek novels, we had gone a long time without anything, aside from those dot matrix fanzine stuff, that most of which was not good. We'd gone a long time without anything. And then we started to get a trickle at first, and when that happens, if you're starving, you'll jump on it. You'll jump on the trickle, and I did. And a lot of those books aren't worth it. A lot of those books are really, really bad, and I retained enough of an identity as a critic so that even when I eagerly fell upon it, when I was done with it, I said, okay, well, it was great to read these names in print, but that was a bad novel. So I'll be revisiting some of those and making videos, making reports back here on this channel. And I'll be going to, with Star Trek the original series, there isn't much in the way of stuff that's just totally unknown to me. But in later months, I think I'm going to obey these same strictures and look at books that I either haven't read. I'm sure there are some Enterprise novels that I haven't read. There may even be some Deep Space Nine novels that I haven't read. That could easily be. There are no Voyager novels that I haven't read. far as I know, there are no Next Generation novels that I haven't read, although there are virtually none that I wish I had read. There are plenty that I wish I hadn't read. But I'm going to go back to all of that and intentionally scour these things for stuff that I have knee-jerk reactions against, a book that maybe I've been thinking for decades is no good. Give it another try and report back to you. That's my TBR for August. And you have a few days left to think about your own TBR for August. What original series books do you have access to, like for instance at your library or at your used bookstore? I'd love to know that anyway. Feel free, if you want, to email me pictures of your library Star Trek shelf or your used bookstore selection of Star Trek books. If you don't have any in your collection now, I mean, and you were to go out to your used bookstore, if your current COVID status allows you to do that, would you find Star Trek books at that used bookstore? And if you did, which ones would they be? I would love to know that sort of stuff. I'm extremely nosy when it comes to stuff like that, or anything really. Since my reaction to people is pretty much Frida's. It's the same as hers, but one way or another, you might want to think about what you're going to read for August, and you might also want to think about my own strictures. It might. If you've read a lot of Star Trek, what about reading Off the Beaten Path in August and all the subsequent months? What about picking the books that you've just thought, I don't really like the look of that? What about that? We're not doing anything except these main iterations of the show. Book Trek 2022, I suspect, will be 5 months of non-main iterations. So not only the later shows like Picard or Star Trek Discovery, called by its many neck-bearded online enemies STD, a little bit of a soft spot for me considering my own initials, but also Star Trek adjacent weird things, like there was a collection, was it called Brave New Worlds, that went on for well over a dozen volumes that collected stories that spanned the whole spectrum of stuff, including Enterprise when no one knew anything about Enterprise. There's Star Trek Vanguard, Star Trek Star Trek Adventures starring Captain Riker on the USS Titan. Whole bunch of stuff like that. There's the Star Trek Corps of Engineers had dozens and dozens of novels. There was a dozen novels set on board a Klingon warship. So there's plenty more to do that we'll do in Book Trek 2022 if all of us survive. That survival is not guaranteed, considering, if you were on board a ship and your ship's counselor was Michael K. Vaughan, you also would doubt whether or not he'll survive, or you would want to. But this could be a USS Intrepid type thing. But one way or another, we will find out. I would suggest maybe try that. If you have, long-standing favorites among Star Trek novels, avoid them for Book Trek and branch out. But anyway, whether you do or not, that's what I'm going to do. And I thought I'd make this little video just to remind you that the event is coming up and let you know what you're in for. I have a feeling that the first book I'm going to start with is Spock Messiah. Pretty sure that's going to be the case. And then we'll move on from there. There are plenty of things to deal with, plenty. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. Those are my thoughts on Book Trek 2021, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.